We're going to be talking through today's Tuesday MLB slate. Really good night for both of us. Sheets, for those of you guys who didn't see, Sheets chopped the showdown, the massive one in the NBA, which is tough to do, and that's big stuff this time of year especially. And we got a few more coming up that are going to have some big prizes. So hopefully keep that momentum going. I finished. I only played one lineup yesterday in the 888 and finished fourth in that, and that was for 15K. So that was a really nice night. Had some swipes at the end, that to get there, and just didn't quite get enough, but still, feels good to be back on the winning track after a couple of really lousy weeks for me personally. So both the double figure profit nights, I think, and we're on to today.
I would also like to say, forgive me if my information is inaccurate, but your lineup, you might have to go to church. Did you not play a 5-man stack to?
I played a 5-man stack.
You did. You did. You played the
I realized as I tried to build all day with a 5-man Seattle that I actually wanted to play all 9 of them.
Yeah.
So ended up with the 5-man. But I was, unfortunately, the first lineup I posted, by the way, you guys can check it out in my early builds. The first lineup I posted yesterday was, in fact, the lineup that would have won the tournament.
I was too cutesy. Seattle was my 5-man stack in the 888 also, but I didn't feel like playing the lefties, so I didn't have Kelenic or the Cerundolo or whatever his name was. The Alvarado, and thought it was a good idea to play Brady Singer also instead of just playing the 2 best pitchers. So that was that. I mean, we both of us cashed for 5 figures, which is really, really strong, and we're ready to get back after it today.
Yep, absolutely. Always gives you a little burst of energy after a good night, because I hadn't had one in a couple of weeks, so it's nice to get back on track here. So with that said, we'll jump into the first game. Cole and Bradish. I really like Garrett Cole. I understand the we could say it over and over, but he sometimes gets hit and all this stuff. Partly there's just more spotlight on him, I feel like, than there's other guys. He hasn't been great lately. I don't think we need to play him, but he is a guy who I have near the top. We always have the same conversation every time these guys pitch. The Cole Strider, we'll get into that in a minute. But I do like Cole, and I have no issue with any Yankees as one-offs. I don't think I would stack the Yankees. I think I'm getting to have a little more respect for Bradish. It's also, 63 degrees, 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing in from right center, so the lefties are a little bit hurt by that. So that's what I've got for this one. What do you got?
I would also like to say before we get into this the slate that I'm coming out of semi-retirement today. It's going to be amazing. I had to figure out where the icon was on my computer, but I think I'm going to play FanDuel today.
Oh, all right. I love it.
No reason. I just kind of feel like it. And then I'm like, if they have a good 400, whatever, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And yep, they have a good one today. So
not everything for them has to be a $44 for 100K or $5,000 for 100K. That's what they put up a lot of the days. And I'm like, I keep getting these 444s. We like this.
So with that said, I'll try to do from both points of view. So first of all, I think on both sides, I do like Cole, and on both sides, it's definitely a question of Cole versus Strider, or if you feel like trying to play them both as your SP1. I personally like Cole, I guess, a little bit better, just because again they're not playing the Dodgers. So I do like Cole as my top overall spend up. And I'm not getting to the Yankees, and I am not getting to Baltimore. So I'm going to start with my kind of shell lineup here. I'll put Cole in, and I'll start my FanDuel. Putting Cole in also.
Yep, sounds good. All right, let's move over to San Diego, Washington. You're gonna have another. It's going to be interesting with pitching today because they're all expensive. Darvish is probably a little overpriced, but has a better matchup. The problem is the Nats don't swing and miss a ton. They're sort of better at making contact, but that might actually end up working itself out as being a very good thing for Darvish, because one of his issues is he can get a little wild, and that's when he sort of tends to get his rough games in there, and they sort of help you out by swinging outside the zone a little bit. So this to say that I like Darvish. I don't know if this matchup I can pay this much for Gore, but everybody's going to feel that way. And the guy's got a ceiling, very, very talented guy. Just a really tough matchup. And I think it's enough to keep me probably off of San Diego, although I don't think it's like the worst idea to maybe play a piece or two, but I probably am off of the hitting in this game. And I have Darvish as another guy to consider, but not as, it's weird to pay the same price for him and Cole, or close to the same price for he and Cole. That's my only issue.
So I'm not playing Darvish, but listen, I have other pitchers I can play today. But if I were in a mood, okay, yeah. I will say this, that Mackenzie Gore got traded by San Diego to Washington for Soto and all these freaking people, okay? And I don't know how much it matters, but Gore has been freaking eyeballing this game for like a long time, I imagine. I don't know. I'll just leave it at that. Actually, I won't leave it at that. 9,300 is probably too much. The matchup is probably too poor, but I wouldn't be surprised if they let him in. And I wouldn't be surprised if he had a good game. There's just too much competition, I think, for points for me to play him. Yeah. But what I'm struggling with is the fact that on FanDuel specifically, and a little bit on DraftKings, like San Diego is showing up as like a very reasonable play. Because you do have Miami as chalk, you have Houston is probably going to be chalk. So I do have San Diego showing up as a decent play, and I'm struggling whether I want to play San Diego specifically on FanDuel when I have this weird thought in my head that Gore is going to have a good game. So that's what I'm struggling with. But San Diego, as far as the numbers go, look like a pretty good option.
Absolutely. Why don't you start off the Dodgers Atlanta? I just got to grab something at the door really quick, and I'll be back in just 2 seconds.
Yeah. So as I kind of alluded to earlier, Strider is top option alongside of Cole. I would have to believe that the Dodger matchup is worse. And listen, I'm like one of those ugly Americans, so to speak, that I just don't believe that Strider is as good as Cole. I know the numbers are yelling at me that I'm just kind of like playing the name game, and just because Spencer Strider is Spencer Strider and Garrett Cole's Garrett Cole, you can't deny what Spencer Strider's been doing as far as his K upside. I just always keep just expecting like the league to just kind of catch up. That listen, he did come into the league last year coming out of the bullpen originally, and and he just kind of exploded on the scene as a starter, and he just hasn't really looked back. I just still have this weird kind of like thought that the league is going to just figure it out, and he's going to end up not that great. But until that time, I mean, he's putting up double-digit strikeouts pretty much every game, with the exception of the last one, by the way, when he was at 12K. So I have to just in my gut feel as though Strider is a worse play than Cole, and that's pretty much all I have. I'm not getting to Miller in this spot, although the thing is good. He's good enough. It's Bobby Miller. Oh, wait a minute. So I need to get your opinion, because I actually do have Bobby Miller as kind of a value play. So I need to get your opinion on who he is. So that's really my only opinion is Bobby Miller, if you like him, and you just have to use Strider, even though I prefer Cole.
Yeah, so I actually feel like the Dodgers offense is sort of humming a little bit. Obviously Strider's awesome and always is going to be in play. This is it's not like a picnic of a matchup for him. I don't really know what I'm going to end up doing with pitching on this slate as we keep going through it, because I don't feel like amazing about this top end, but I probably need to have exposure to it just because they can just crush everyone else. So to go into the Miller side on the other side, there is a little bit of he was a really good strikeout pitcher in the minors for a couple years. He's been off to a slow start in the minors this year. I don't know how much of a leash he has. I wouldn't be trying to go out of my way to play him, but I do think that there is a chance, and I'll probably have to look into it even a little bit further as well, how much of him I actually want to play here. But I do think that I'm considering him. I don't know how I feel about it. I feel very wishy-washy on that. And at the same time, because you have any pitcher who you're not well familiar with in Atlanta can be rough. You do the winds are a little more crosswinds today, but they're still blowing in from the left a little bit. Same. And you notice the guys hitting home runs last night were the lefties and JD Martinez, who I believe hit an opposite field home run in this game. But there was a lot of offense in that game, and these teams both have power. It's a huge stadium upgrade for the Dodgers, and for Atlanta, they always crush the ball at home. So I'm considering Atlanta, and I'm considering Miller right now. I sort of sum up where I'm at the end, but really not sure what I'm going to do yet with this situation, even as as Strider goes, because I don't feel like anybody's in these great matchups where I feel confident. So should I be spending 12-3 on a guy to get 20 to 25 fantasy points? That's where I'm at. But if he can get 35, then obviously all bets are off. It's an interesting game. It's what I had the hardest time with. You have the Cubs and Mets next.
No.
Oh, you have which one? There's a bunch of 4-4.
Tigers.
Okay. Let's see. Tigers.
I'll start with this. So the leader of the free world, Eduardo Rodriguez, finally had a bad game. I mean, after just mowing down the entire civilized world in straight starts, he's not showing up as a good, well-projected guy. But hell, I mean, freaking Kansas City. This could be one that I just jam. I don't know. Like in the face of all the projections and all this stuff, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, like throughout that last game, I mean, why wouldn't you play him? That would be my very non-analytical take. As far as hitting goes, I don't want to play. By the way, I'm not going to play Daniel Lynch. But as hitting goes, I actually am getting Detroit as a kind of a value piece. On both sides, but FanDuel specifically to kind of fill out some of these other more expensive formats. So I don't know. I mean, as far as my sheets go, whatever, you're probably supposed to avoid the pitching and avoid this whole game, honestly, with the exception of some value Tigers. But I don't know. I just kind of feel like playing Erod.
Oddly, I think the Tigers are going to end up being kind of popular today. Like it's just weird for the Tigers on a giant slate to be, but I think it's reasonable. You've got Vierling at the top. Vierling just seems like I feel like the guy hits a home run every day, and he's usually betting like 7th, 8th, or 9th. So even when I play the Tigers, I don't tend to get him in as much as I kind of should or would. One thing you have to worry about with the Tigers, just want to throw this out, like they do have like there's pinch hit ability for a lot of guys in this lineup. You know, the guys in their starting lineup yesterday, Badu, Nick Matan at third. All of these, like Scope might not be around except for against the lefty. Vierling will probably be around. Torkelson, they don't have to. Ibanez probably won't be around. Miguel Cabrera may not be around. It's just something to think about. I have both sides of this game kind of interesting from a hitting perspective. I'm sort of like I've always been, Erod has talent. He's always all over the map. You never know whether. I don't know. You never know quite what you're getting from him. He was really, really awesome for those 5 starts in a row this year. And I think he's definitely in play. Like with all these other guys, maybe instead of playing all these top guys, maybe like Erod and Gore at no ownership can come up with a similar score, But I'm more interested in the hitting and more on the Detroit side. But I actually don't mind taking like a decent number of the Salvador Perez, Olivares, Bobby Witt. Those would be my 3 favorites. The thing that you have also working for Erod a little bit is the rest of the bets aren't all that. Maikel Garcia is really cheap at third base, shortstop eligible. Should be moved up in the lineup. Batted 9th yesterday. May bat as high as 5th or 6th today. So it really depends on how their lineup shakes out a little bit. But I think it's more than just pieces. I actually think this whole game could be pretty interesting. And I still don't respect, especially the Royals bullpen, but I still don't believe the Tigers bullpen isn't one of the worst in baseball. I think it will show itself to be soon enough. So I like the hitting in this game more than anything, but I don't mind the Erod idea. This is a tough slate. All right, next up we have Houston, Milwaukee. Sheets, why don't you jump into that?
Yeah, I'm not getting to the pitchers here. I'm getting just all kinds of projection numbers coming out on Houston, both on DraftKings and FanDuel. So going to have to talk about that. And I'm not really getting too much Milwaukee. So for me, I mean, I'm seeing Houston as maybe the top non-core stack on DraftKings and top non-core stack on FanDuel, and they're getting owned accordingly. So we'll have to really talk about that. You like Houston here? You like Milwaukee? You like anything?
I like pieces of both. One thing to keep in mind, Milwaukee's been really terrible against lefties. And wait, hold on. Am I mixing France up with somebody? I've got to double check my notes here.
Yeah, I have France and Red.
No, but yeah, I sometimes forget because he's a new one. I'm pretty sure. I have him as. That's my problem. I knew something was wrong. I had him as a lefty on my list. That's not right. All right, so Houston, I think, makes perfect sense. I think that is a stack that you want to get exposure to. Colin Ray hasn't been going that deep into it. He just doesn't really have much of anything. I think it's really hard not to have Houston as a pretty high priority stack.
Well, they're expensive. That's the only thing. I mean,
right.
Some of them are expensive.
Yeah, they are. But if you're assuming that Jolks gets in there, he's cheap. You can always punt the catcher position, which is not my favorite to do with Maldonado, but it's viable. But they are expensive. And I think that the other side, though, is kind of interesting. Milwaukee. Adames is really cheap. He's had some struggles this year, but I like Adames. Tellez, Winker's super cheap. He's not been good, but he's cheap. Yelich is affordable. So I think this whole game is actually interesting as well. And I lean more on the Houston side, but I am definitely okay with some Milwaukee bets, especially the top of that order. So I'm sort of in on this one. I think this is a good spot to try to attack today.
Yeah, to me, in the next game, San Francisco, Minnesota, this is where you get a probably the most reasonable. Well, we'll talk about it, but a reasonable pivot off of both Strider and Cole, that being Sonny Gray at 10-6. So I like that a little bit. And like Alex Cobb, I'm getting as like some, maybe like the seventh or eighth pitcher on my list. I'll probably end up with just like a handful in just MME, just because the way lineups will just kind of just build, but certainly not going to make him a priority. And I'm kind of ranking like 6 or 7 stacks as like my top ones, and I'm not getting either of these teams there. So for me, it's Sonny Gray, maybe a little Alex Cobb as pitchers, and no hitting.
Yeah, I don't see a big gap between these pitchers, and there's a 2,300 price gap. So give me Alex Cobb. I mean, yeah, Gray, I guess you say, has a higher ceiling. I think you could argue that both of them have good matchups here, or good enough matchups. So I have Cobb and Gray on my list, but I have Cobb currently as being a guy I prefer. And I don't think Gray is that much better of a play. Why is he a much better play than Yu Darvish? So I don't see Gray and Darvish as being all that different. Those are my 5 guys right now that we've talked about that I'm using. So I do like Cobb, though, for what it's worth. I like him enough, I should say. And I'm not getting to the hitting in this game. There's just nothing that really stands out. Could something happen? Sure, just not for me. Just double checking the weather there. It's pretty warm. It's pretty good hitting weather, but I just am not on the hitting at all in this game.
Any weather in Chicago?
The White Sox?
No, the Cubs. The Cubs.
Yeah, 70. So yeah. So sorry, I'm trying to keep track of the bouncing between screens and the games you've got and the games I've got next. But yeah, the Cubs. You've got 70 degrees, wind slightly in from right field.
So not a big Wrigley wind game, so to speak.
No, but again, and the wind tends to shift there, so it's kind of early. But like it's only 6 miles an hour right now. It's predicted in from right field, but somewhat cross field. So,
well, I mean, I really mentioned this because Senga flashed the ceiling finally. He's 9,400. Again, another kind of maybe I prefer him over Gray. Again, doesn't project from a medium perspective is that great. He never does though for some reason, and he finally put up a really really good game. And as long as the wind isn't blowing out, I think he's pretty reasonable. I'm not going to play Smiley here, but for whatever reason, he's keeping me off the Mets. I guess he's good enough for keeping me off the Mets. I'm not getting to the Mets at all. So for me, I might be inclined to play some Senga as a pivot. I don't know if I'll get to him in a big buy-in or anything like that, but I'll definitely think about it.
Yeah, I like both these pitchers. I really don't think we should ignore that Smiley is like when he's always been that way where he's streaky, and when he's on, he's like one of the best. Smiley's been like consistent and on all year, and he's not had like cake matchups at all. He has had some lucky win matchups. He's also had some terrible ones, including that game against the Dodgers was a 15-mile-an-hour wind blowing out, and he put up 40 fantasy points. I think Smiley, based on all the other guys we talked about, has got to be one of the guys you prioritize today, in my opinion. And I actually think it's shocking that no one's going to play him. The Mets have been just nothing but the Mets, but they're just a name right now. Like, I think it's time we treat them with the horribleness that they've treated the horribleness that they've played, and they're just not as strong a team, I think, as everybody thinks. Well, let's put it out this way: on paper, we thought this was going to be the year they break through and they're this awesome team and everything, and they've been nothing. They've been garbage. So I like Smiley and Senga. I have interest in both of them. I think Smiley is like, I do think that if you're gonna take the anti-Smiley, like if I wasn't considering him as a pitcher, I think I would consider some Mets here. But Marte's 3,700, Pham's 2,200, probably batting fifth today. Alonso 52, totally reasonable. A nice little three-man stack. You can play Lindor in there. You can run on Smiley, so Lindor and Nimmo and Marte can all steal bases. So can probably Canna down there at the bottom. I don't think the Mets are. I think they're like an off-the-board stack that I'd take some chances on, and I will also play some Smiley and some Senga. But I'm getting spread out pitching-wise because I don't feel extremely confident in any of these pitching situations. So playing these guys are definitely going to be a little bit higher on my list today than they usually would be.
You wanna start the Miami, Colorado?
Yeah, sure. All right, so Gomber and Yuri Perez. Today is a day where I may be a little bit like I've seen this so many times with the Gomber thing, and he doesn't get hit in the way that everyone wants him to most of the time. Every now and then he'll have one of those bad ones. He's walked more guys this year, but I still think he's able to get through enough of these games clean enough to where you just look back and he had the 5 runs he gave up last time against Cincinnati. Okay, they got to him. But going back, he had to go back 4 starts before that to Pittsburgh before he actually had good games all the way in between. I'm not saying he's some sort of great pitcher, but I'm saying guys who know how to pitch in Coors. I have these. I think both these teams are fine for pieces, and I think that I would prefer if I had to pick one side for hitting, I would pick the Rockies. But I also think that Perez has a little bit of talent, so I'm sort of stuck here, and I'm just curious where the ownership is standing. It looks like the Rockies getting completely overlooked and Miami crazy popular. If that's the case, I would just play the Rockies instead. So I'll put Colorado as a priority and Miami for pieces because I do think that a low-owned Colorado stack when it's 80 some odd degrees or 72 degrees and wind blowing out, it's definitely interesting to me. So more with the Rockies side, but certainly fine with Miami for pieces. Just don't see the reason to stack a chalky, bad hitting team on this kind of a slate.
I'll expand on a couple of points you had because I wanted to make similar ones a little more aggressively. Miami shows up as as a top stack. It's going to be really, really chalky again, and they're probably going to avoid them again. And your observation that Gomber is just not the type of guy that just gives up like zillions of runs is very important on a slate like this. So probably avoid Miami in the big buy-ins. Colorado, I noticed the same thing you did with respect to their ownership. They're just kind of getting overlooked. So in that respect, I kind of like them. But then you hit on another point. I mean, apparently this guy is good, this Perez.
Yeah, he's got some skills. Yeah.
Yeah, and to the point where, he was actually called up from Double-A to make these starts. They were talking about how though he's ready to come to Triple-A, and they're like, screw that. Let's just grind him up there. And it's kind of weird because if this game were like in Miami, like Perez would probably be like 10% owned.
Yeah.
And like almost be like a lot.
Maybe more. Yeah.
But I'd almost rather play him at 10% than like 3% in Colorado. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'll probably end up doing it I mean, listen, not like the 777 or something, but I'll make sure to get some of it. Just because. But the thing is that if Colorado is not even going to be popular, what's even the point? You know what I mean? So I don't know what I'm going to do with that, but just to say, like you said, he has some talent, and but I was about to say, well, it's enough to keep me off Colorado, but why do I need to be off Colorado if no one's playing them? So we have to double check ownership as we get a little bit closer to lock. But but maybe everybody's on the same idea. Maybe people know that Perez is not bad, and that's why Colorado's not going to get on as much. But we'll.
Well, it's interesting because Colorado is like everybody's like, well, we know what they don't hit. Doesn't matter whether they're at home or on the. I'm like, well, I mean, not like Miami has been like tearing down defense. You know what I mean? We shouldn't just assume everybody's a better offensive team than Colorado. Yeah, that's where I'm at anyway.
All right, so I'll do Boston Angels first. Yeah. I like 3 out of the 4 legs of this game actually. I do like Bello as a cheapo, as an SP2, and yet on the other hand, I like both the Boston hitting and the Angels hitting somewhat. So I could go with all three of those 4 legs. I'm not going to get to Canning, but I could be talked into any of that. Now Boston, I think, is going to get some ownership, but I don't think anything else I mentioned will. Actually, the Angels might, but I would tell you, I think Bello is pretty reasonable. It's always very dangerous when you take kind of a younger pitcher like against like Trout and Ohtani. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I'll play a guy like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have Bello as a guy too today for what it's worth, but I'm pretty spread out with pitching. So he is one of them. I prefer the Angels though if I'm going to stack than Boston. You do have like some affordable pieces with Jared Walsh and Moniak to try to get around the because of the prices of Trout and Ohtani are so high. But I still do have some interest in Bello because those guys also, we also don't have great hitters around them. I don't do the Boston on big slates outside of Boston thing. It just doesn't feel right. I mean, maybe like that they're in New York or Toronto or something, but it's like one of the largest park shift downgrades in baseball. I think it's okay. Like I'm not gonna say it's like wrong or anything, but you got Verdugo at 5K. Like, I mean, who I love Verdugo, but like 5K in LA is not, I don't know. It's not the same guy as he's going to be in Boston. Yoshida at 54, Devers at 57. I don't want to play Jarren Duran at 4K. So I'm off of Boston. I like the idea a little bit more for the Angels. And I also, even with that said, though, I still have some interest in Bello. And so sort of interested in both sides. This is not a slate where I feel I have incredible conviction about anything quite yet. So I'm trying to figure it out.
So I'm a little confused. So as usual, I'll start with the last game. And I mean, we've gone through the slate, right? And just to kind of review, right? So you have Cole in one game. You have, maybe San Diego, but it's against Gore. Then you have the Strider game. And then you have the Detroit, Kansas City. You have Houston as kind of a decent stack, but they're all expensive and they're no lock or anything like that. And then you have the Chalk Miami, which you kind of want to fade. I can't imagine why we just wouldn't just go right back and play Seattle again. I mean, like they're against the funky Cole Medina, whatever. And my current ownership doesn't really have them getting old. I can't imagine why they wouldn't. They just keep on just scoring these runs. So for me, I'll just probably be master of the obvious and just go right back to freaking Seattle again. So that's my really again very data-driven approach to this game in this slate. And with respect to Gonzalez, sure, listen, whenever you're playing against Oakland, you're probably in play. So I have him sort of in there, but I'm not going to prioritize that. So for me, I don't know. I guess go right back and play Seattle again.
Yeah, Gonzalez, sure. That's sort of how you feel. He's on my list of guys. I don't know exactly where I'm going to end up with him. Maybe I'll play a lineup with he and Bello in it. It's not like I can even pivot off of anything later because there's nothing else to pivot off to pitching wise. You know what I mean? But I do think both those guys are in play. I'm totally happy to go right back to Seattle here. It's it's Medina and it's a horrible A's bullpen, which we see every night, it feels like. And I think that Seattle is definitely, I don't know how many stacks I'm going to have, and it's not just because they won me money last night, but I will be playing a pretty decent amount of Seattle tonight. So in that summing up, I actually am having an impossible time even ranking my pitchers, which is going to make everybody play Cole and Strider today. And not to say that they wouldn't anyway, but it's not like we have great other options.
Who are people going to – so here's a question. So who do you think people are going to play? Like they're going to pick either Cole or Strider. They're not going to play them both, right? So who's you think so?
Every time Cole and Strider pitch, I've never played them without each other in my main build.
Well, I can't. How you're going to do this with 3,300?
So easy to do. It's so incredibly easy to do on big slates. I mean, there's like 9 guys batting in the top 5 of lineups that are 2K. Like, again, yes, is it easy to do and stack the most expensive team? No, but you have plenty of guys who are 20.
What am I going to play? I'm going to stack the Tigers. Is that what I'm going to do? I mean.
The Tigers right now are projecting as like the second highest owned.
And that's stock. Why I guess yeah. So. Yeah.
But I don't know that people might. I don't know what they're going to do, to be honest with you, with the other pieces, because all of these other guys, like everything feels so similar. It feels like we should be playing the lower ownership more with pitching than usual. But Sonny Gray would be the next guy, I would imagine, and then probably Alex Cobb.
Erod.
Maybe Erod and Mackenzie Gore are an answer. You know what I mean? Or maybe Senga is the answer at lower ownership. I actually think you can let ownership dictate.
How about you get some wind blowing in and you go to your Drew Smiley?
Yeah, if the wind's blowing in, I'll definitely do that. Why not? I mean, I don't think there's a huge gap between like any of these guys. And going back to even the first game, which I didn't talk about this guy for this situation, like why is Kyle Bradish any different than any of these guys? Like, I honestly, like they're all the lower guys feel fairly similar. Bradish is actually putting up some numbers. I don't know. I just sort of feel like I can't figure out what I want to do with pitching. I'm gonna have to see how the builds go, but Cole, because when that's what happens when I feel that way. That always means that the highest priced guys are going to be the most popular, like almost every time. So I do think Cole and Strider are going to be so much higher than everybody else that almost anything else you can do would make sense and get a little bit off the chalk. I wouldn't play Miami 5-man stacks. I would be happy to stack any of the following: Seattle, the Angels, Colorado, Houston, Detroit. Detroit, KC, Milwaukee, I have more as like I'd rather play 3 or 4 than I would 5, but I think they're both fine to play 5. Most of my stacks probably will be 5-mans or 4-4s today.
Yeah, so I will. I'm probably going to end up just playing Seattle. But what I'm trying to think about is whether I'm trying to think of my schedule for tomorrow and see if I want to do the live thing tonight. Only because I'm going to be out tomorrow, but I don't know when I'll be back. So it's possible I can be back in time to do live tomorrow. If I didn't, then I'd probably want to do it tonight. Tomorrow
I can't do it live,
so you want to do it tonight?
I can do it tonight even, but I've also got a family thing before it. So I'm okay. If you can't do it, well, we can always take a week off.
Well, I think what would be cool if we did it would be like at 10:30, only because you get the last half hour of the basketball game.
Although last night you would have gotten it was a little later than that,
right? But then you get the Seattle game, which is going to end until like 12:40. That's a little long.
It's a little long.
So I don't know.
7:30 might be a little bit close.
I have to check my schedule.
Well, we can revisit it later and play it by ear.
Yeah, we'll play it by ear. Everybody watch for that.
Yeah.
And I guess that's it.
All right, Chief. So we have to use the last night as a springboard, right? So
right. Keep it going. Yeah, that's right. Springboard the five figure followed by 6 figure.
Exactly. There we go. All right, buddy. Well, good luck to everybody. Congratulations, last night, Sheets, and we'll see you guys tonight, or we'll see. I'll see you at 6 Eastern, no matter what, and then we'll figure out what we're doing about the live sweat. Good luck.